Didn't Trump pass an executive order the other day saying that, like, he's going to kill all of us? Remember how on Inauguration Day, Trump set a 90-day timeline to determine via joint recommendation from the Department of Defense and the Department of Homeland Security whether or not they wanted to implement the Insurrection Act, and then the timeline passed and they didn't do it, which was nice. I'm glad they didn't end the world, basically. We have another timeline. Always got to have a timeline, folks. Always got to have a doomsday counter ticking down. Strengthening and unleashing America's law enforcement to pursue criminals and protect innocent citizens. That's good. I love protecting innocent citizens, so this should be good. When local leaders demonize law enforcement and impose legal and political handcuffs that make aggressively enforcing the law impossible, crime thrives and innocent citizens and small business owners suffer. Remember late last night when somebody was trying to convince me that downtown Toronto was like a scary place to be at night or whatever? They were like, bro, you grew up in LA. You don't know shit about the streets of downtown Toronto. That was good. That was really funny. My administration will therefore establish best practices at the state and local level for cities to unleash high-impact local police forces. High-impact. Protect and defend law enforcement officers wrongly accused and abused by state or local officials, and surge resources to officers in need. Very homoerotic. My administration will work to ensure that law enforcement officers across America focus on ending crime, not pursuing harmful, illegal, race and sex-based equity policies. Of course, of course, of course. The Attorney General shall take all appropriate action to create a mechanism to provide legal resources and indemnification to law enforcement officers who unjustly incur expenses and liabilities for action taken during the performance of their official duties to enforce the law. Or in other words, if cops ever break the law and beat you up or kill somebody or do racial profiling, the Attorney General of the United States of America is going to step in and directly protect them. So it's essentially like qualified immunity, but beefed up like 1,000 times is the idea. This mechanism shall include the use of private sector pro bono assistance for such law enforcement officers. Or in other words, Trump has deputized several high-profile law agencies by threatening to bar them from federal work via executive order. And as to blackmail them essentially, or to strong arm them into providing free labor. So you're going to have like high profile private lawyers who are forced to work for free as like essentially like debt slaves for the federal government, whose job it'll be to explain why it was necessary for Derek Chauvin to hold his knee on your neck for 9 minutes or whatever. The Attorney General and other appropriate heads of executive departments and agencies shall take all appropriate action to maximize the use of federal resources to provide new best practices to aggressively police community against all crimes, expand access and improve the quality of training available, increase pay and benefits for law enforcement officers. Oh yeah, very necessary. Strengthen and expand legal protection for law enforcement officers, seek enhanced sentences for crime against law enforcement officers, promote investment in the security and capacity of prisons, increase the investment in and collection, distribution, and uniformity of crime data across jurisdictions. Within 60 days of the date of this order, the Attorney General shall review all ongoing federal consent decrees, out-of-court agreements, and post-judgment orders to which a state or local law enforcement agency is a party, and modify, rescind, or move to conclude such measures that unduly impede the performance of law enforcement functions. Or in other words, cops have unlimited political power. They're a second class of citizen who has more legal rights than you. They will have more money, and the federal government will intervene and protect them at all existing levels across the board in all cases to the best of their ability. And here we go. Within 90 days of the date of this order, the Attorney General and Secretary of Defense, in consultation with the Secretary of Homeland Security and the heads of agencies as appropriate, shall increase the provision of excess military and national security assets in local jurisdictions to assist state and local law enforcement. Within 90 days of the date of this order, the Secretary of Defense, in coordination with the Attorney General, shall determine how military and national security assets, training, non-lethal capabilities, and personnel can be most effectively utilized to prevent crime. So there you go. They didn't go with the Insurrection Act, at least not yet. Now they're going for the, to what extent can we militarize the police and use our massive bloated military budget to secure the population. It's so comforting to know that after all this illegal police state BS, Chuck Schumer is bravely defending our rights by sending a strong letter. Hey, don't expect the Democrats to save us. All of this is Democrat rhetoric. Unironically, dude, the Democrats completely gave up on any police reform after Black Lives Matter. They mocked people who said, defund the police. Really, they were like, well, defund by 100%? Okay, it's irrational. It's actually fine for every police department to suck up 40% of every municipal budget. And they just completely gave up on it. And since then, like, Democrats locally and nationally have continued to endorse the tough on crime rhetoric in an era of lowered crime rates. Yeah, Biden talked about, like, increasing police funding. It's just, don't expect the Democrats to save us here. The Attorney General shall pursue all necessary legal remedies and enforcement measures to enforce the rights of Americans impacted by crime, and shall prioritize prosecution of any applicable violations of federal criminal law with respect to state and local jurisdiction whose officials, A, willfully and unlawfully direct the obstruction of criminal law, including by directly and unlawfully prohibiting law enforcement officers from carrying out duties necessary for public safety and law enforcement, or B, unlawfully engage in discrimination or civil rights violations, against white Christians, no doubt, under the guise of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that restrict law enforcement activity or endanger citizens. Or, in other words, they're going to go after state and local officials, presumably Democrats, who in any way impede the right for police to violate your rights. Neat, neat, neat. They're going to go after J.B. Pritzker? J.B. Pritzker has been a little bit more fiery lately. That's true.
Never before in my life have I called for mass protests, for mobilization, for disruption. But I am now.
Governor J.B. Pritzker took the gloves off in his speech Sunday night at the McIntyre Shaheen 100 Club dinner, and Granite State Democrats loved it.
These Republicans cannot know a moment of peace. They have to understand that we will fight their cruelty with every megaphone and microphone that we have. We must castigate them on the soapbox and then punish them at the ballot box.
Those calls for disruption and Republicans to not know a moment of peace did not go unnoticed.
Those Chicago gangster tactics just don't play here in New Hampshire. Like, we're the Granite Staters expect us to, get to work, solving problems, having riots in the street, shouting in megaphones, burning cities down like we saw for 6 months back in 2020.
Democrats have to realize this, okay? We don't live in a shared reality anymore. The idea that the Black Lives Matter protests burned down half the country is locked in as a fact in the mind of these people, and they are less people for it. They're just not rational people that you can talk to or argue with, and you're not going to appease them. There's no level of pro-cop rhetoric that you can engage in that will appease them. Absolutely none. So there's no point in trying.
That's not what Americans want. That's not what they elected us to do.
Pritzker was swarmed after his speech, young Democrats in particular telling us they didn't expect to be so fired up by the governor of Illinois, who also happens to be a billionaire. Analysts say in these earliest stages of the next First in the Nation primary, potential presidential candidates are attempting to channel the intensity of the feeling right now in the party base.
In the full speech, J.B. Pritzker talked shit about it says here in the title, do nothing Democrats as well, which is nice. It's such a base speech. Yeah, well, we'll see if it turns into any, like, action. It should, like, I hope to, like, people have to understand looking at this, that, like, again, no work can be done with Republicans. There's no point in appeasing, getting along with them. There's no point in bipartisanship. You can't agree on a shared reality with them. They don't exist in reality. You're talking to children, and the difference between them and children, honestly, is that children are more open and curious about the world and also less evil. Like, that's the difference, really. They're not political entities that can be reasoned with, We understood this in World War II, okay? Neville Chamberlain didn't, Roosevelt and Churchill did. There's a point past which you just can't. You're not going to reach a bipartisan consensus on this. You're just not. You need to take the country with overwhelming democratic force and like an overwhelming mandate. And the only way to do that is to show a better message. And you're not going to do that by capitulating and giving half versions of what the Republicans want. You're not going to. You never will. No one who is terrified of crime in the MTA is going to vote Democrat because the Democrat adopted a half measure on the criminalization of, I don't know, walking funny in the metro, whereas the Republican just wants to shoot everyone on sight who's darker than me. No half measures, Walter.
What I find ironic about the current conversation surrounding our party is that the voices flocking to podcasts and cable news shows to admonish fellow Democrats for not caring enough about the struggles of working families are the same ones who, when it comes to
People who are scared of crime in their white suburban neighborhoods are the worst. They're never going to change. That's why I was making fun of the person who was like playing up how dangerous downtown Toronto is at night. You people are pathetic. For one, it's the safest time in history, like ever, for one, okay? Every human but you has enjoyed their lives in a more dangerous context. And for two, the more safe people are, the more they whine about danger, okay? Why is it that when I see Brazilians post online, they're talking about anime and how fat their women's asses are? You know, Brazil has like a way higher crime rate, like orders of magnitude higher than America, right? Why can they enjoy their lives, but you're terrified? The average crime rate in New York City is lower than the average in the state of Louisiana. Like, it's totally irrational. You've made fear your personality. It's pathetic. And I don't think it should be respected. I don't want to coddle you. I don't want to meet half measures with you. I want to stomp on you. I think you're a worm. You're a worm in the dirt. You suck. Your whole political personality is defined by wretched terror because people on the internet made money from telling you that things are worse than they are. Yeah, it's a fear cult. It's a death cult. You're not going to win anyone over. No one is going to be compelled. Did anyone vote for Biden because Biden said he wanted to increase police funding? No. But I bet you, well, he didn't end up running in 2024, I guess. So I guess I should say Kamala, but Kamala didn't really say anything. She implicitly adopted the positions of Biden without challenging them. So I guess I should say, did anyone vote for Kamala Harris because she was the right amount of strong on crime? Maybe a few people. But I'd be willing to bet Kamala Harris could have come out and been a lot more popular with the right sectors of people if she had trashed Republicans for their cult of fear. Really, I do. If she had been smart about it and she'd been like, we live in one of the safest eras in all of human history. Republicans are petrified of every city. They're whiny. They're weak. It's disgusting. And they promote the antisocial culture that leads to crime being more common. They contribute to income inequality. They want people to be fearful and alone, and that's what leads to crime. But she didn't do that. Democrats don't do that, obviously.
relief of the struggles of real people have been timid, not bold. They didn't want to fight.
Aren't people tired of the polarization? I don't know if you're joking, but the answer is no. Democrats actually are. The average Democrat is waiting for someone to tie them to a rocket and fire them at the White House. No. People actually like polarization. People do. Look at how all of Canada, especially the Liberals, got energized by polarization against the United States. People like polarization, obviously. People like good guy, bad guy narratives. Have you paid attention to humanity? Like all of humanity? It's very unique, the like brain rot of the like centrist liberal, you know, of the like suburban 65-year-old white like WASP, you know, like, oh, I don't really care about politics or anything really. I just want everyone to get along. Like, this is a very specific and insincere kind of brain rot. These people can be polarized as well. And in fact, a lot of them are now. The average Democrat is not satisfied with how well the Democrats are fighting back against Republicans. People want good guy, bad guy narratives. And I've got good news for you. We've got a hell of a bad guy on our hands. It is the best possible time to rile people up with that narrative because it's more true than it ever has been basically ever. This is one of the clearest good versus evil battles this country has ever seen. It's as about as clear, the lines are about as clear as the Civil War. Also important to note, by the way, that like initially, one of the reasons why the Civil War was being won by the Confederates, I don't know how much you guys know about the history of the Civil War, but initially Confederates were doing disproportionately well. And one of the reasons for that was because the average Confederate soldier was fired up because they really liked hurting black people. They really, really liked it. They'd been subjected to nonstop propaganda for years about how the mean old Yankees were taking away their right to hurt black people, you know? And at first, Union soldiers weren't that hyped up because the average Union soldier was, you know, really racist, obviously. And they were basically just like, why the f are we doing this? Why are we doing this? We had a country. Why are we, what's happening? Why am I going down? Why do I have to march down from New York to, you know, Virginia or whatever? But over time, the Union soldiers got way the f more energized. And you know why? Because they saw the hell south of the border. The longer the Civil War went on, the more fired up the Union soldiers became, and their language took on the rhetoric of a holy war. Because they went south of the border and they were like, oh my God, they were doing this? Like, I thought I was racist. Man, this is like a good versus evil battle. Yeah, they saw the land of traitors, rattlesnakes, and alligators. That's true. Same during World War II? To a large extent, yeah. Did Lincoln help create a narrative? Dude, the South created the narrative. They were f***ing evil, dude. The average Union guy was like racist. The Confederates were fighting for like mass rape, genocide, slavery. They were demons. They were demon people. They literally broke off from the Union and then started a war to protect their right to be demons. They were demon people. And as the Unions, and you know, and if you're fighting demons, eventually your language takes on the tone of a holy war. People want to be polarized. You just have to set the lines. You're unintentionally repeating lost cause rhetoric by saying the Confederates broke off to protect slavery, then started the war, and then were evil. Well, they were always evil, but is that lost cause rhetoric?
The health insurance companies and the drug manufacturers, they didn't want to demand an increase in the minimum wage or require paid family leave. They gave in.
Yeah, I do believe in the lost cause. The lost cause of the Union, mother. What happened to Reconstruction? Lost cause propaganda? Yeah, I'm a firm believer. What the happened? When did we lose our way? Reconstruction should have gone on for a century.
To the powerful hedge fund managers and tech bros whose blind pursuit of profits is now destroying everything that matters to middle-class families, from home ownership to health care to veterans benefits. They told us to ignore the fact that most Americans can't afford a vacation while they're young or a retirement once they're old. Here's the problem with the do-nothing crowd, now telling us what to do. Well, they spent their years watching Republicans illegitimately pack the Supreme Court, take away voting rights from people of color, systematically chip away at the constitutional order. And all the while, they offered, in response, a simple defense of norms and decorum and a blind hope that one day soon, Republicans would wake up to find their better angels. Well, that got us exactly where we are today. So, folks, the reckoning is here. And now that this culture of timidity is on full display, those same do-nothing Democrats want to blame our losses on our defense of black people, of trans kids, of immigrants, instead of their own lack of guts and gumption.
It's a good full speech. We're still talking broadly, I think, about the Policing Act, I guess. Where was this during the campaign? I just don't think a lot of people understood how bad the National Democrats were until 2024. I think a lot of people have really kind of been lulled into a sense of false security over the state of the nation. I don't know. He's almost certainly going to run for the presidency. Do we generally like JB? Yeah, he seems like, you know, in the context of American politicians, he seems pretty good. Him being a billionaire doesn't really matter. Poor people can be evil. Like, we're talking about his accreditation, right? We're talking about him here, not like the class character. FDR was a rich upper class guy. Gotta suffer through your Hoover.